Hey everyone, I'm Stephanie, and I believe that all readers should read children's literature, especially adults. So that's what we do on the KidLit Love podcast. We celebrate all things children's literature, picture books, early readers, middle grade, and young adult novels too. Whether you're an adult reading to your inner child or connecting the young readers in your lives with fantastic books, you've come to the right place. Each week, we'll talk to a different children's literature author and discuss their books, their hopes and dreams for readers, their writing process, and much, much more. So, grab a notebook to build your TBR, and let's get to today's episode of KidLit Love. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the KidLit Love podcast. I'm Stephanie Affinito, your KidLit loving host, inviting you back for another bookish conversation with a children's literature author. Today, I'm talking with Jamie Michalak. Jamie is a former editor and the author of many children's books, including the Dakota Crumb books, the Frank and Bean Early Reader Series, the Joe and Sparky Early Reader Series, and come on in, there's a party in this book. She's here today to talk about her newest release, Hazel the Handful. In this picture book, readers follow the adorable puppy Hazel through a typical day at home, until the baby arrives, that is, and everything changes. It's for dog lovers, for expanding families, and everyone in between. I can't wait to talk about this delightful picture book, so let's get right to the episode. Jamie, welcome to KidLit Love. I'm so glad you're here today.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. As I mentioned before we hit record, it feels like this conversation has been a long time coming, and I'm so glad we are finally here talking about your newest book. But even though we're here talking about Hazel the Handful, I would love for you to tell us a bit about you and your journey through children's literature, including some of those series that I dropped in the introduction. Can you tell us a bit about all of those things?
Sure. Well, I think I started loving, I always loved books and reading and writing, but I didn't really start writing stories until fourth grade. And my teacher, Miss Slazinski, would have these story starters up at her desk that we could go to and grab if we finish our work early. And it was just free writing. It was just for fun. And it was something like, if you found a hippo and you wanted to make it your pet, what would that be like? And you would write about it. And so that was, it was like a reward, and it was play, and it sort of instilled in my brain, like, that writing's fun, and you could make anything you want happen on the page. And I would try to finish my work really early to get those story starters. So that really got me excited about writing. And then I got into journaling, and I decided I wanted to be a journalist. I would read lots of mysteries, and I read Harriet the Spy, who was, about a girl who would spy on her neighbors and write about it. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever. So, so my friends on my street, we kind of started our own little newspaper. So we would interview our neighbors or put in neighborhood gossip and type it up. And then my friend's mom would make copies at work, and we'd sell it door to door. So that's when the hook of writing really got into me. And I thought I'd be a journalist. And then when I got to college, I majored in English, had no idea what I wanted to do, thought maybe I'd go to law school. And then I learned about this job called being a book editor, and these people that read stories all day long, which sounded like the most incredible dream job. So some friends and I moved to New York City. We gave ourselves a month to find jobs because it's pretty much all we could afford. And I just kind of fell into the children's book publishing business. I was really more, obviously reading adult books. I was right out of college, but once I got into that world, like, that changed everything. I just absolutely loved everything about children's publishing. I was an editorial assistant, and just learning, about how a book is made. Like, I always thought it came in, stories came in perfect, and they just printed them. And you see, like, even from the most established authors, it's a lot that changes between submission and publication. And I learned the importance of leaving room for an illustrator, and page turns and pacing, and working with an editor and designer, and just it was such an incredible education for writing my own books, which I was writing. I was sort of a closet writer. I didn't want to tell anyone I wrote in case they were horrible. So I just kind of like wrote in secret. And then when my son was born, I stayed home with him and was a freelance editor. So I worked from home, and that's when I felt kind of safe to
Mm-hmm.
send it out to the world. And that's when I started getting books published. So I published the Joe and Sparky early reader series. Just I kind of gravitate toward humor. So they're just like kind of silly books about a giraffe and turtle. First book is they go on a joyride and take it around town. And then I wrote most recently the Frank and Bean early reader series that's based on my sons when they were younger. And the latest Hazel the Handful.
I feel like we would have been really good friends when we were children.
Yeah. Did you write it?
Well, I got my work done as quickly as possible just so that I could get my book out and I
Oh,
could read. Well, you would be writing the stories. I would be the reader, but I also was the kid who made the newspaper with her friends, who drafted it, who typed it up on
oh my goodness.
grandmother's old-fashioned typewriter and made
Yep.
copies and stapled them and brought them to anyone who would read it. And I feel like we would have been fast friends doing that kind of
Do you
when
still
we were
have
kids.
it?
I do. My
Oh, I'd love to see
grandmother
that.
actually brought me this big manila envelope a couple of years ago with one copy of every newspaper edition
Oh,
that I had created with my friend. And to look back on those to see I wrote poems, I
oh,
wrote informational things of what was going on in the world. I tried my hand at crossword puzzles and jumbles and comics, that
oh.
would be in the regular newspaper. And it was just such a treat to be able to go back and see those. Do you still have any of your
I
old newspapers?
I do, and they make me feel so old because we were reviewing Thriller by Michael Jack. Like we did some reviews.
Yep.
I think Reynolds has a whole article in it. It's very dated, but hilarious. I mean, some of the stuff we put in those papers, my mom was like, I cannot believe you just said that about, shared that little secret about
Yep.
your neighbor or whatever. But wow, we could have had a whole business.
We could have. We could have. I never, I maneuvered my family into getting the newspapers, but I thought, oh man, I would have never had the idea to go door to door and get something for those newspapers. This is gonna make me want to go back out and get that envelope back from my, the shelf on my closet and look at them later
Oh, I hope you
today.
post a little bit of it. I want to see those.
I maybe I will. Yeah, but it's just it's a wonderful thing to have stories as part of your childhood and just the
Right.
fabric of our childhood that it sounds like we both had that and you followed, that path into editing. But I had to smile how you were kind of a closet writer who wasn't sharing it. And so many authors who have come on this podcast have said it was my kids. It was my kids either being home with my kids and having the time or realizing I want to write for them. Kids are
Mhm.
such beautiful reminders of what's possible, I guess. And so I just loved hearing about that journey from what you loved as a kid, how it turned into a job, but then how eventually those stories that you used to write, in fourth grade, you allowed to come out as an adult. Oh, love it.
Yeah, it was something I just completely fell into. So, and I'm so glad I did.
Yeah. And getting that inside view of the publishing industry, I imagine came in handy when it was time to decide what to do with your own books.
Yes, absolutely. Even just knowing, that not to take rejection personally, because you're seeing all of the thousands of manuscripts that
Right.
come in, and it might not be that your manuscript isn't the best. It might just be that the timing was off or that editor has different tastes. And so just knowing the business side of it too, it
Yeah.
was it was really comforting. But and then knowing and then reading all these stories and figuring out, oh, these are the kind of stories I like, and I'm really attracted to voice is everything, and humor and a little
Mhm.
quirk, and this is what these are the manuscripts I don't think are working as well, and to put your finger on why is, and to just have that vocabulary that I didn't have before I
Yeah.
started, as to like just pinpointing and describing what you think works or doesn't
Yeah.
is super helpful.
And so, in thinking about some of the books that you have written, the early reader series seem to be something that you gravitate towards. Can you tell us a bit about them and how and why that called to you before we start talking about Hazel?
Yes, I think two reasons. One is I just loved those books when I was younger, Mouse Soup and Frog and Toad. Anything with the
Yes.
first books I read with chapters where you can
Mhm.
put a bookmark in it and feel like a, kind of, you know, older or whatever. And they were funny. And so I just have like a soft spot in my heart for that format. But the truth is I would start to write a picture book and it would always turn into an early reader. And I have so much respect for people who can throw out lots of picture books because it is such an art form. You
Mhm.
have to condense so much into so few words. I mean, I do write picture books too, but early readers come much more natural to me, and I can arc out a plot over 4 chapters. You have a little more breathing room. And then the other reason is my kids, they were reading those types of books at the time, and I kind of were, like you said, writing books that I hoped that they would like, and they
Mhm.
were both reluctant readers, so that was a big piece of it too.
Yeah. As a former educator who worked with kids, now I work with teachers, but working with kids, I loved working with the reluctant readers the most because it was such a challenge to tell them, not for long, like we're going to find the book, we're going to find the series. And you're right, there is something magical about
Right.
those early reader series, those early reader chapter books that makes them embrace the identity of a reader. Like this is a big book, air quotes, kind of big book.
Right.
I can put a bookmark. There are chapters. And when they feel that confidence and then know, oh, there's another book that I could go to next, and I'm already familiar and I've got all of this background knowledge, and it makes the next book easier. I do feel like that's just a magical genre for getting kids turned on to reading and helping them feel like this is something that I can do. This is who I am. So I love that you naturally gravitated there because I think there's such power in books like that for kids.
Yeah, they're so important. And even like the word choice that I pick for each books, I make sure that they're books that the words they're familiar with. And maybe you can throw in a challenging word here and there, but I don't want them to feel frustrated. And adding that humor is, the big hook as well. So yeah, I think my kids were just really active. I always say they're like reluctant sitters more than reluctant readers.
Yes.
Long enough to read them. You could read to them at night or whatever. But then you're right. Once they found that series, they were all in. The
Mhm.
weird school books really
Yeah.
turned my youngest on to being a hardcore reader after that. And those books are. I think people don't realize how difficult those are to write. Like, and how he sustained that whole series,
Yeah.
and again, like not a lot of words in those books for how much story he packs in. Dan Gutman, of course. So yeah, when those are the kind of books I wrote for a long time.
Yeah. Well, and Hazel, this is a fun book. So I can see the humor in this book, and I know you said it's more natural for you to go to those early reader series, but this is a beautiful, delightful picture book, and I think it's especially meant for me because I am a dog lover. I have five. It's far too
Fine.
many dogs to have. I didn't. They were all surprises from some family member that had to rescue one or the other. But I've also seen the transition from bringing the first child home and then bringing the next two and three because I have twins, and always wondering what are they thinking? What experience from a dog's perspective are they going through? And so I love that your book is this first person perspective of the dog of what in the world is happening to my life right now in this really fun, humorous way. So I would love for you to talk a bit to listeners about Hazel the Handful. Give a little, even though I just gave a sneak peek, you can give the author's overview of what it's about and maybe the inspiration behind this picture book too.
Sure. It is about a very pampered pooch and her girl bee, and they are best buddies and they do everything together. And they have a whole routine that they do every single day, which is Hazel goes on her business trip, which is she does her business and behaves politely, and then Hazel barks at the big dogs, and I should say Hazel is like literally a handful, a very tiny dog,
Mhm.
but her personality is a handful as well. And then they take selfies together and they play dress up and they have like a whole bedtime routine until the baby comes and disrupts everything. But I had the inspiration for a story as it started a really long time ago. I had to look this up. There's a photo by this photographer, Elliot Erwitt, and it's called Felix, Gladys, and Rover, 1974. It is the most adorable photograph. It's it's two pairs of legs. So there's like a Great Dane's legs. Then next to it is, I assume, Gladys's legs in her black boots, and they're in Central Park or something. And then there's this little tiny Chihuahua wearing a little knitted coat and matching hat and looks out very worried and is so close to the ground. And I was just so mesmerized by this photo. I was wondering, what is it like to see New York City from the point of view of this little tiny dog that's so close to the ground? And what is this dog like? And so I just really concocted this whole personality for this little dog. And I wrote so many stories about this little dog in New York City. And she lives in a penthouse with her girl, B. Like Hazel and B were always there. And I knew like Hazel took herself quite seriously and she liked big words like sensational. And, she has a lot of attitude and a bunch of little stuffies that she's organized by rank. But she was kind of a character without a story. And then my cousin, who always said she was not a dog lover, adopted this little tiny dog because her kids had been begging her. And it looked and acts exactly how I imagined Hazel. And it's so weird. And I feel like there was a vision board and I just like put a picture of Hazel and she appeared. It was very just very big coincidence. So she had asked me to pet sit, and she lives in the city, and she lives on the top floor of an apartment. And so I was so excited. I went over to pet sit this little tiny dog, Pepper, and my cousin, as she was leaving, we were having kind of a long conversation. She had her door open to leave, and we were talking, and then she left, and I, immediately looked for Pepper. Couldn't wait to play with the dog. Couldn't find her anywhere, like tore the whole apartment over looking for this little tiny dog who's just like as small as my hand. And it took like maybe 20 minutes and I could not find this dog anywhere. And I sat on the sofa. I literally thought I was going to cry. I couldn't believe I had lost my cousin's dog before she'd even caught her plane. And then all of a sudden I felt like this little rustle next to me and there was a little blanket and I picked up the blanket. And the dog had been under the blanket the whole time, like looking up at me with this really grumpy face. And it just immediately sparked an idea for the story Hazel the Handful, because there is a scene with her. I don't want to spoil it, but
I was just going to say, I can't say what I want to say right now, but I'd be so happy to hear you talk about that and having read the book to get a connection. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah. And so then the rest of that weekend, I just kind of observed her and took notes and she has so much personality. She's like this 1 pound dog with 10 pounds of personality. And she has so much attitude and has all these stuffies in this little hut that she sleeps in when she wants to get away from people. And then I left with a draft of the story that's really very close to what ended up being published. So it took a very long time, but I knew this dog. And the story of dog meets baby is kind of familiar, but I think the twist on this is that it's this dog that has a big personality and you're seeing it all from her eyes.
Yes. Yeah. The perspective. That's what I love the most is the perspective of the dog. I think so many of us are fascinated by that. We really do wonder, what would our pet say about
Right.
us, about our lives, about the changes in them if they could talk? And so I feel like right from the first page, the reader is just involved and invested. And literally even before the first page, because you've got the picture of Hazel's home. And you've got Hazel in the window, this cute, adorable little cutie patootie, but we can talk about that word, who says, "Yoo-hoo, up here, it's me, Hazel. I look small in the window, but come inside." And it's just this direct invitation to the reader to open up, to settle in, and to have fun with this adorable, like truly adorable little dog. So I do love that that is the perspective that you took in it, because I really felt like, okay, I was there. I was there, and I'm getting Hazel. And if you look at my own dogs, of course, a little differently. We have she's just about 2 pounds, this little tiny Yorkie. And so I could just totally see what is going through Hazel's mind, going through our little Lucy's mind. So just so many beautiful.
Too.
Oh, really?
Lucy too, yeah.
Yeah. So tell me about that. Was the book always written from Hazel's perspective?
Yes. And it was always like I label a lot of things in the art. In that there was always in every story she was giving a tour and she's very self-important. So showing the reader off, showing the reader all of her things, her toys, that sort of thing. So it was always from her perspective. And then Matt Myers, who illustrated it, just brought so much warmth and really captured the love of that family. And I loved how the house is not super neat. It's like lived in and it feels so real and familiar. So yeah, he brought it to a whole nother level.
Yeah, I am so glad you mentioned that, because I did want to make sure we gave him the credit that was due, because the book is it there's so many things I could say about the illustrations, but I love how you've got some contrast where a lot of the pages are just this gleaming white background that allows the colors that he's chosen and the outlines that he's chosen to just pop in so the reader can feel there. But then it alternates in some cases with the colored backgrounds that kind of shift the mood and the thinking of the book. And I just love how he brought the dog's expressions to
Yes.
life, that love of the family to life, but also you can feel the action in the book too. This is a dog on the move. This is a busy family, and the reader can feel it. And as you mentioned earlier, like in humor, there are just so many funny elements that are going on with Hazel and Bee, from when life is good to when life takes a turn and the grumpy faces come out. So yeah, what a beautiful pairing of your words and his illustrations. It was just perfect. They work so perfectly together.
Yeah, he made all of those choices with the backgrounds and the color and that sort of thing. I think he did a phenomenal job.
Yeah. And, even though we are saying it is fun and it is this light first person, narrative from the perspective of the dog, there are big things going on in the book that will likely be going on in readers' lives. You've got big transitions, right? Of siblings coming home, and things are changing. And so I feel like you've got a nice balance of both. It is this fun invitation, but it's also something that a lot of readers will likely see themselves in as well.
Yeah, I hope they do. I kept that in mind when I was writing it, thinking of a child that might have a new sibling in the house, and Hazel's almost like a proxy for that child, right? So,
Yes.
thinking of how they might feel when it is a big change, when a new baby, everything changes, but then there's so, I think, once the baby's been, get accustomed to the baby being in the house and so on, that it makes life so much better, you have even more love in the house. And I'm struggling right now because I don't want to give away the ending.
I know. It's hard. It's so hard.
But yeah, it's just like, the more people that are there, the more love you can create in that house. So in some ways, in this house. So that's yeah.
I like what you said too about Hazel kind of being the proxy. I think that's the beauty of books that have animals in them, that they can go through the similar experiences that we might be going through, and it shows readers, okay, it's okay. It's okay to be unsure about this big change. It's okay to, and again, this, what do you say, what do you not say? It's okay to have these conflicted feelings, and to be upset, and to wonder what's going on, and to maybe just hide from everything. And Hazel gives readers permissions to feel all of those big feelings that they might be feeling.
Yes, and she does experience all kinds of emotions in the book. She's angry, she's sad, she's worried, and then, eventually comes around.
And again, you know those feelings because looking at those illustrations, Matt really does put feeling in Hazel's face,
So true.
which is so wonderful.
Yeah, I didn't even have to put that in the words because he's captured it so well in the illustration. So yeah, she did a great job.
Yeah. It's definitely a book that readers are going to be able to fall right into. And then when they're there for that fun and that story, likely feel seen or be able to connect to that story in a deeper way as well.
Yeah,
When
I
you
hope
think about the kids that will get their hands on this book or read it with their families, what is your hope for it that readers will walk away from the book with?
I think I really always just want kids to laugh. And
Mhm.
even, I don't want to write one notebooks. Like I always want to have some important theme and not like hitting them over the head with a message, but there has to be heart there as well.
Yes.
Um, but that's always my goal. I just love that moment when you're reading with kids and I love putting in humor that the adults can relate to as well. So, both if a child's being read to, both the adult and the child are just having this sweet moment together, connecting and laughing over a book. That is, to me, so magical. And with my own kids, I still think of books that we've read over and over that we laughed together with. And to this day, I can talk about that book and we have such great memories about it. So, that to me is always the top focus. And then I also, like it's a big hug for people going that might be in this situation to say, it's going to be okay, and you're going to actually love this. Even though there might be some bumps happening along the way, and you're still loved, and you're so part of this family and appreciated. So yeah, those are my two
Yeah.
hopes for this book.
I love how you said this book is a big hug. It is. It is. I think that's the gift that all books could give readers when they find that right book in the moment. I've
Mhm.
had so many times where I've closed a book and I've hugged it because I've needed the book.
Oh,
But you're right. This book, it is a hug in so many wonderful ways. And I know readers are just going to fall in love with Hazel for
oh, thank
sure.
you. Thank you.
And all parts of her and all growing parts of her and her changing family. And I can definitely see families connecting and bonding and talking and just growing their heart a little bit bigger for whatever their family might have in store. Because even though here the storyline revolves around a growing family, it really does just have this essence of things change and
Yeah.
you can feel a certain way. And maybe it's not the exact situation going on in your family, but I think it can still feel like that hug no matter what it is.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So where can listeners find you online to learn about your books, your early reader series, find more about Hazel? What's the best place for them?
So my website, Jamie Michalak Books, is a great place to start. That I also include a lot of activities. I don't have a Hazel activity yet. I just recorded a little trailer for it, but I have to get some activities up there. But that's a good place to start. My early reader, Frank and Bean series, and Dakota Crumb is like a Seek and Find series, and Joe and Sparky early reader series. And then I have a nonfiction book I co-wrote with Debbie Michiko Florence called Nikki Nakayama. You can find activities for all of those on my website. And then I'm also on Blue Sky at Jamie Michalak and Instagram at Jamie Michalak Books.
Okay. I will make sure to put links to your website and the activity pages along with Blue Sky and Instagram, and of course, direct links to the books that we've talked about today, especially Hazel the Handful in the show notes. Thank you for coming on and chatting with me today. I loved meeting you. You've reminded me to go get my newspaper out, peek at it today. And listeners, I know, are going to really enjoy Hazel the Handful in the future. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. This was so fun. Thank you so much, Stephanie.
Welcome. And listeners, thank you for listening to another episode of KidLit Love. And I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the KidLit Love podcast. You'll find links to all the books, resources, and ideas mentioned in the show notes at alitlife.com. And if you want more, you might like to listen to my other podcast called Get Literate. It's a podcast that explores all things books and reading, notebooks and writing, and everything in between to build a life you love. One more thing. If you love what you listened to today, please take a moment to rate and review the podcast or take a screenshot of the episode and text it to a bookish friend. This helps the podcast grow and builds our bookish community of KidLit Love. Thanks for listening.